The Mission Impossible series began way back in 1996. Why, that's damn near 30 years ago. In that series, 8 films have been released. Now, these films have made, so far, $4.5 billion. And while the second film in this series is not very good, and the third film barely broke even, films 4, 5, and 6, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout, were both critical and commercial successes. It seemed that this franchise was on a roll, and the 7th film, Dead Reckoning Part 1, was on the path to continue this success. However, a difficult production of that film led to a massive budget of nearly $300 million, and fans seemed a little bit turned off by this film, leading it to be the second lowest grossing film of the franchise. And, it was okay, but I did think that that movie was a little bit weak as well. Now, this past weekend gave us the release of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, the 8th and final film of this franchise. So what do we have here? Does this film stick the landing on this pretty terrific franchise? And not only does it become a critical success, but a financial one as well? Or will this franchise crawl to the finish line, ending with a second straight box office loss? Well, before we answer that, let's talk a little bit about the plot for the film Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Let's talk.
So our story begins 2 months after the last movie. IMF agent Ethan Hunt remains in hiding as an artificial intelligence known as the Entity reveals itself to the world, causing widespread panic, civil unrest, and martial law. The Entity has amassed a cult-like following of acolytes who believe the AI will rebuild civilization after an apocalypse. President of the United States, Erica Sloan, played by Angela Bassett again, has asked Hunt to assist her and the government in seizing and stopping the evil AI. With shreds of his former teams and a collection of former foes, Hunt and his IMF remnant set off on a global festival of missions to capture and poison the Entity, removing it from global servers and thus saving the world from the nuclear annihilation that the Entity plans to unleash.
It's impossible.
So what works in this film? Look, if you watched my videos in the past, you will know that I am a huge Tom Cruise fan. And I always have been. I think that Cruise is the last great movie star. And what I mean by that is, he's the last performer where you sit back and say, hey, this is a Tom Cruise movie and I'm going to go see it just because he's in it. And you know what? He doesn't disappoint here. He's been playing Ethan Hunt for nearly 30 years. He knows the character. He knows what people expect from the character. And his performance is outstanding here. He definitely gives it his all. And also, massive kudos to him because at 60 years old, he still performs his own stunts. His screen presence cannot be denied, and he puts his all into this film. We come to expect superior special effects from Mission Impossible movies, and this one does not disappoint at all. It's the perfect combination of spectacular and jaw-dropping practical effects with seamless CGI. The action set pieces are spectacular, especially the submarine scene and the biplane chase scene. These are 2 of the strongest action sequences in this entire series. Finally, the supporting cast of Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Haley Atwell, and Angela Bassett all deliver great performances, especially Rhames, who has been part of this franchise since the first film. No spoilers, but his role in this was very emotional and heartfelt, and it was a great send-off for his character.
Impossible mission force.
What doesn't work in this film, however, is that it is ludicrously long, nearly 3 hours. And while the last 90-plus minutes are great, the first hour drags. And what makes it drag is there is a ton of exposition dumping. It's like the movie knew the previous film really didn't do that well, and this being a direct sequel, it felt like it had to pretty much explain what was going on over and over again, which may have helped people who haven't seen the last film, but those of us who have seen the entire franchise, it just felt very redundant. Also, the plot is crazy complex. So many things are happening, so many things have to happen, so many plot devices. It's just hard to follow at times. It makes the film extra long because it seems like every 15 minutes the entire cast get together to have a conversation, which is basically a recap of what has happened and what needs to happen. It just drags the movie down and it just takes you out of it too often. And finally, the villain choice of an AI, I've always felt, like dating back to the last movie, it was a little bit weak. We can't interact with an AI. It doesn't really speak. And it only has really one scene in this film where it interacts with Ethan, and that is only over the period of a couple minutes. So it's always just this vague threat. Now, Gabriel, the villain from the last movie, he's here as well. He's supposed to be the manifestation of the villain, but his character is just written like the generic mustache-twirling villain that we've seen a million times, and you don't really get a sense of him being a big threat. All that being said, however, despite its bloated runtime, bloated script, and mid-villain, I still enjoyed this movie more than I did the last one. Yes, it's too long. Yes, it's too convoluted. And yes, it may not completely stick the landing for this franchise, but there's enough fun action in this movie for me to recommend it. And if nothing else, just getting to see Tom Cruise play Ethan Hunt one last time was worth it. Now, time will tell if this movie is a financial success. It had a pretty strong opening weekend, but because of its massive budget, it needs to make almost $1 billion to break even, and since none of the films in this franchise have done that, I don't see this one doing it either. Look, it's not the best of the series, nor the most compact, nor the most elegant, but it has heart, it has spectacular action, and it has great performances, especially by Cruise, and sometimes that's enough.
Sometimes it's enough.
Definitely see it on the big screen if you plan to see it, just to enjoy the spectacle. Well, that's it from me this week. Tune in next week where I give you my thoughts and feelings on whatever I've seen. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe, leave a comment or a question, share this video with friends and enemies alike, and as always, thank you for giving me your valuable time, and I'll see you next week. This review will self-destruct in 5 seconds.